We are now privileged to have two great presenters, and their bios and more information about them are on our website, but I don't think they really need much of an introduction. Will you please welcome and thank Javier Gonzales and Ko Skinsnes.
Welcome, thank you for coming. My name's Ko Skinsnes, and this is my good friend Javier. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping. Jason did all the thanks, but we want to thank the ITG for having us here, for Casey helping with the sound, all the tech crew, and you guys for showing up. It means a lot to us that you'd spend part of your lunch hour to listen to us here. So I'm going to make the assumption that everybody in here knows a lot about trumpets, mouthpieces, and trumpet playing. And we're going to try to give you some new things to think about, some old things, some new things. And when we were putting this seminar together, one of the things we had to figure out was, where are we going to start? So we decided to start here.
Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
So how about showing Javier some love for that solo, huh? So I'm reminded of a story that happened years ago. I'm sorry to say it was 50 years ago when I was 16. I know, hard to believe, but 50 years ago. I lived in Hawaii. I was good friends with an amazing trumpet player, Johnny Madrid. If you're not familiar with him, please do a search on him and check it out. And we were living in Hawaii, and Johnny was out of town with Boz Scaggs at the time. And I was at the local music store looking through all the method books, trying to find something new. And I found the craziest book. I mean, it was just insane. It had all these weird photographs of this guy and all these crazy ideas that I knew were nothing about trumpet playing. And I bought that book because when Johnny got back, I was going to go over, we were going to laugh about how crazy this book was and how crazy this guy in the book was. And it was a book some of you may have seen. I actually still have it here. Trumpet Yoga by Jerome Calais. I paid $9.95 for that. Who'd have thought that 50 years later that'd be a gallon of gas in California? But that's another story. Anyway, so John comes back from tour. I go over to his house, we're hanging out, and I go, hey, John, I bought this crazy book. It's insane. You got to see it. And he goes, oh, what book did you get? And I pulled it out of my case, and he goes, oh, Jerry's book. He goes, that's a great book. And I'm thinking, I looked at him, I said, what, are you nuts? I said, it's crazy, look at all this stuff. He goes, no. You have to understand, you don't have to do what Jerry Callet tells you to do with his lips or his ear or anything like that. You try it, see if it works. But you gotta understand that Jerry Callet had a problem. As I understand it, he'd hurt his chops, and he had a goal. And he used an innovative method to try to figure out how to achieve his goal, and he achieved the goal. He said, learn that. He says, if you learn that, not only can you play lead trumpet, but if you can learn how to play lead trumpet, you can do anything in life. So that's kind of what this seminar is about, is trying to find new ways, new paths, new ideas, whether it's on the equipment side or whether it's on the performance side. So when you do that, sorry to block the thing, you always got to start with the prior art. So what does that mean? If you're going to design a new cell phone, you don't start with a rotary dial phone that's got a wire going to the wall. You're going to start with a current Android or an iPhone, and you move from there. So that's what I've done, and Javier's done that also on the trumpet pedagogy side. You want to tell us a little bit about that, how things were when you were in high school, college, and how you got to here?
So when I was in high school, young age, the methods that I was using was, first of all, the Arbins, which is the trumpet Bible, and then I also learned the Clark Gordon systematic approach to daily routine. James Stamp, and a Bill Adams routine. So that was sort of my go-to, when I was at my age, the pedagogy. What the things were you doing for the
Well, I mean, I was a trumpet player, moved from Hawaii, figured I was going to take the studios by storm. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. But basically, I needed a gig. And I knew Bob Reeves because I'd been a customer, and I had nothing but respect for Bob Reeves. I believe he's the greatest mouthpiece maker that's ever lived. And I believe that for a lot of reasons. If you want to know, come see me and we'll talk about it. But the main thing I got out of that was that he was a problem solver. And I learned that nothing's going to change if nothing changes. And he solved problems. And from him, I also got to meet Bill Cardwell, who we'll talk about in a little while, who I studied acoustics from, Gary Bass through him, who's my partner in crime and some of this stuff. I also met Carlos Morales, who is a master repairman and modifier of horns, and he's here with his lovely wife here right now. Would you guys stand up for a minute, please? They dated for 64 years, and 3 weeks ago they got married. Show them some more love. It's a true story. Okay, so what Jerry Khaled did was he figured out to use a scientific method and solve a problem. So I told you we were going to tell you there was one most important thing, because Curly said that for Mitch and City Slickers, and there is one most important thing. If you go after this in your equipment, and if you go after it in your playing, you're going to be way ahead of the game. And that one thing is, I'm the dramatic one between the two. That one thing is, okay, now I know that's two things, but they work together, and I really, really like that City Slickers clip, so that's why I left it in there. But anyway, there are two things, relative intonation and damping. If you get both of them, you got the best worlds in your setup. And people ask me all the time, can the equipment do some or all of the work for you? Not all of the work, but a lot of the work, and I say absolutely yes. But it's got to be the right equipment, and it's got to be dialed in for yourself. So we're going to show you a bunch of graphs, and to understand what they're about, we use machine testing. This is Bill Cardwell I mentioned to you earlier. This is a device he built and referenced in a patent called the salpingometer. We have a modern one today. It looks like that. And that's Gary Bass. Gary Bass, stand up and wave at everybody. Where are you? There he is, my partner in crime. He's a heavy lifting. Great trumpet player, fine trumpet player, and also great acoustician, also studied with Bill Cardwell. And that's him playing at Carnegie Hall a few months ago with the oldest concert band in the United States, the Allentown Band, and they were at Carnegie Hall. Anyway, this allows us to measure the relative intonation of a trumpet and a mouthpiece within 1/17%, which is 1 musical cent. Very accurate. It's important that there's a mouthpiece involved as well. Best human ears can hear about plus or minus 5%. So what this device allows us to do is to come up with intonation graphs like this. So to understand this, and we'll see a couple of these as we go along, if a note is scooted to the left, it's flat compared to the other notes. If it's scooted to the right, it's sharp compared to the other notes. Because these notes are all overlapping in the vertical, they are in tune with themselves below the level of human discrimination, below the best human ears as far as pitch is concerned. When you have a situation like this, if your trumpet and mouthpiece intonation pattern looks like this, you're in a great spot, because all of these notes reinforce each other. They generate sympathetic vibrations, overtones, a big full resonant sound, and the pitches are where you expect them to be. If our trumpets and mouthpieces all look like that, we wouldn't have a need to talk anymore. But sadly, that's not the case. These are more typical patterns of trumpets that I'm sure are in this room. And you see, any of these that are not lined up, you're not going to get good harmonic engagement. So you're fighting the sound. They're not helping you at all. So my work with intonation and understanding it and working with players and Bill Cardwell led me to always go for intonation as far as helping somebody. The better we could get their gear in tune, the more transparent it was. And by transparent, I mean you hear the note, let's say you got to play a high F sharp. You hear the note, And you don't have to think, okay, I got to push the second valve down, I got to lift my leg and point to the west. All you do is hear the note and play it. Transparent, that's the goal. So in this Todd, I'd made mouthpieces, flex mouthpieces were pretty successful, and they had very, very good intonation curves, and Javier was using one. And then one day, Javier called me up.
So at this point, mouthpiece, Kay already got a mouthpiece sorted out for me on the trumpet, and I had a very great control connecting, 4-octave range on the instrument with good control. And I figured since I had all this connection now and I felt very comfortable with it, I want to be able to do more with it. So I noticed that I couldn't really articulate anything above G above high C, like real strong articulation, like I was doing it down the octave. So one day I just figured I would ask KO, hey, I know I could practice more and figure it out, or is there something you might be able to tweak or think about that can help me out?
So he challenged me. And I was thinking to myself, gee, how can I make a mouthpiece that's going to make it easier for Javier Gonzales to articulate notes above G above high C? Gee, I wish I had that problem. And well, I guess I do have that problem. It just extends a lot lower. Anyway, Gary and I had been talking about acoustic ratios in mouthpieces and trumpets and bandwidth and all kinds of things. And there are different ratios in a trumpet mouthpiece. For example, there's a first resonance frequency and a second resonance frequency. Don't know what they are, but they have a ratio. And so we had identified a number of acoustic ratios, and we knew the target we wanted to hit. So my idea was, if I could make a mouthpiece where if this is your low C and this is your high C, can I make a mouthpiece that makes them feel closer together? Because if they're closer together, they're easier to play. If they're closer together, that G above high C isn't as far away. It's easier to play, and an amateur like Javier might be able to tongue up there. Sorry. So I had an idea. I made a mouthpiece. I don't know where I got the idea from. I woke up, Dave Bonette says he gets his ideas from Sheldon the cat. I don't know. I might have gotten it from my neighbor's pit bull. But whatever, I had this idea. I'm here all week. I made this mouthpiece, and I said, Javier, come check it out. So Javier came up and...
Well, immediately, as I attacked the first note, careful there, I played a C in the staff, and how I would normally do it on my regular setup, it felt so much louder. I couldn't explain why, but I started, going up the whole range of the instrument, and I just started noticing that everything felt much easier, and it just felt closer together. So I was very excited to take it home with me and go use it in a rehearsal band.
And I was listening to it, and I've heard him for a number of years, and he always sounded good, but there was something magical about the sound of this mouthpiece. It was full, it was resonant, it was clear, and I thought, okay, man, we got the Holy Grail here. So that evening, Javier sent me this video.
They are super close together.
But then...
So then I know that was a Monday, because on Tuesday I was doing the Mike Barone rehearsal, which is a big band rehearsal that happens every Tuesday here in LA.
And it's one of the harder books in town.
It is one of the harder books. And start the first song, I start chopping out by the first shout chorus. And I thought, okay, maybe it's still early, I'm still warming up. And then I stick to it. 3 songs later, I'm just completely pooping out. It was not working, so I put it away, went back to my old setup, and it was back to normal. It essentially felt like I just could not meet the volume of the section and the whole big band, so I couldn't use it. So then I called KO as I was driving up to the shop that same day.
He calls me up and says, I can't use this mouthpiece in a big band. It's like, oh, thanks, I had a nice night, but here's a good day. And I said, why? I said, why can't you use it? He goes, I can't play loud on it. I go, what are you talking about? He says, when I crescendo on a note, it just stops. And so I said, well, when you have a chance coming up, he said, I'm on my way. And so he comes up, and, I don't know, but I brought that mouthpiece. I still have it.
I've been staring at it.
You've been staring at it. This is the one. And I'm thinking while he's driving up, what does Javier Gonzales mean when he goes to play a note and it stops when he crescendos? So this is what happens.
So I'll just play a G right above the staff. I just have zero control over the crescendo.
It ain't working so well. So it was clearly one of those moments, back to the drawing board. So I called Gary up, I'd sent him the first video, I sent him a video of Javier, the mouthpiece failing. I said, we gotta do something. And so, along with our research and working on these acoustic ratios, we had also started studying increased bandwidth that generates more harmonics in the trumpet sound. And part of that was because of the 4-valve instruments that my partner in Spain had developed that were getting all these overtones. And we started to look at that bandwidth and the harmonic engagement, and we knew that some of it came from a thing called damping. So we talked about it, we said, well, what about if we can keep the acoustic ratios where we want them because the intonation is good, how can we add this thing called damping, which I'll explain in a minute. And we thought, well, we got to change the shapes of the mouthpiece. They are changes in physical shape, but they're really changes in acoustic shapes to maintain the ratio but change the damping. So we did that. He did some calculating, a bunch of acoustic tests. I'd made some prototypes, etc. And I made a new mouthpiece. And I called Javier up and I said, okay, come check this out and tell me what you think. So this is the same mouthpiece but with rearranged acoustic properties. You want to try that G thing again?
Yeah, I'll do it again. It's a huge difference. That's a huge difference, the response I get now.
Okay, that's cool. Can you play something more fun?
Oh, sure. Well, let's see what happens.
Okay, so what is this damping that we did? Officially damping, if you have a vibrating system, an oscillating system like a trumpet is with the mouthpiece and everything, anything that decreases the resonance is called damping. And you say to yourself, well, why would I want to decrease the resonance? Don't I want a big full sound? Well, yes, you want a big full sound, but damping can be your friend. The blue color, you see those, think of the tops of that as the slots, okay? And from left to right, we're going from low notes to high notes, so frequency, and the vertical axis, the Z, is the amplitude. How loud is it, okay? And the different peaks are the slots. So if your slots have less damping, like the blue, they're very tight, they're very narrow. When you hit the note, it feels very secure, but it doesn't generate very much bandwidth, nor the resulting harmonic content that you're looking for, the overtones, okay? When you add damping, the slots tend to broaden out like the black color, you see they're rounder. So the target is bigger, it's easier to start the note, you get more bandwidth and more harmonic engagement. So even though with the less damping, you see a lot of those slots are louder, if you will, with appropriate damping, even though the resonances are quieter, the sound is going to sound fuller and effectively bigger. So we're always looking for a balance to find the place where the notes are easy enough to start, you have enough security on the slot, but you generate a lot of bandwidth. And so that's what we had done successfully on this mouthpiece, and we call it the DaVinci because Leonardo da Vinci is known for the golden ratio, and this was based on ratios. So that was great. We had a mouthpiece that worked really well for Javier Gonzales. But what about people that play orchestral mouthpieces or anywhere in between? So now it was dozens more acoustic tests, building prototypes, figuring it out, and we figured out how to take the concept and translate it across a full line of mouthpieces, from very small commercial mouthpieces to much larger orchestral type mouthpieces. And if you, we did some spectral tests. So the green is a very popular common mouthpiece, been around, conventional mouthpiece, been around forever. It's a great mouthpiece. But if you look at the blue behind it, the DaVinci, you see how all the expected harmonics and all the stuff in between, it's a lot louder, right? So for the same, so this is the fundamental, and if you see the green and the blue, they're about the same volume, very close to the same volume. So the trumpet player is producing the fundamental, in this case, the middle C, and the green is producing this much volume, and the blue is producing a lot more energy, especially up in the higher harmonics where a lot of the trumpet tone and brightness is concerned. So for the same amount of effort, you're getting a lot more output. Okay, that's cool. What does it sound like? So this is what we would call a suboptimal setup. You can see the intonation curve ain't very good on that. In fact, it's pretty bad. And the first graph you're going to hear, just a low C. It's going to be a bad intonation, not good damping. And the second one's going to be good intonation and improved damping. So here's what it sounds like. You hear it's kind of small and it's not a good sound. And when you correct the intonation, it gets clearer. It gets clearer, it gets louder, it gets fuller, it gets more resonant. Intonation and proper damping are important, and here's just one more of those. You can see it. It's the same kind of thing you saw with the DaVinci, the green being the in-tune system, and that's a lot more energy. Each one of these, the difference in volume from here to here is 12 decibels. 6 decibels is twice as loud. So up here you've got 24, 4, 5, 6 times as loud for the same input. It's a good way to let you provide the fundamental. If your equipment's dialed in properly, Mother Nature supplies all the harmonic content, and that's free gas. Okay? Free gas. So you say, oh, that's really interesting, K.O., but how do I know if my trumpet setup is in tune with itself? Well, the best way is this simple intonation test. You're going to crescendo on that middle G and try not to do anything with the pitch and see what happens. If the instrument, your setup, is in tune with itself, because all those harmonics are lined up, they're going to hold the pitch together. If it's not in tune with itself, the pitch is going to fall off, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate this. Don't get intimidated at all, Javier. He's sensitive. He's got feelings. You obviously know Javier. Okay. Crescendo on the G. This is my trumpet. Try not to do anything to hold the pitch. Let it go where it wants to go. Pitch stays pretty much the same when you crescendo. Here's a situation that's suboptimal from that standpoint. I'm going to do the same thing. Immediately it goes flat. You have an in-tune system versus an out-of-tune system. If you want to come try these afterwards to prove I'm not, doing any trickery or anything like that, please feel free to do it. Okay, so you've been around to all the different places, you've tried different trumpets, you've tried yours, you're playing this crescendo, everyone's mad at you because you keep playing the same crescendo over and over again, but you decide that your system is not in tune with itself. Or you want to mess around with damping. Well, let's understand one quick little thing, and then we'll move on a little bit more. So a trumpet is an air column, and what it really means is air column is just the air inside the tubes of the instrument. That's all it is. Okay, it's an oscillating system. This is a very simple air column. It's a Coke bottle with some water in it, and when you blow across the top, you get a note. I've seen Javier figure out how to get more than one note out of the... Just one more. One more, and then one night with a Perrier bottle, he was trying to get a third note, and he just got splashed in the face with Perrier. That was really fun. But... So you can get a couple notes out of that, okay? And if you want to raise the pitch of that, of your Coke bottle, you change the air column by putting more water in it. Now you've changed the shape and the volume of the air column, the note goes higher. But let's say you say to yourself, well, that's cool, I kind of like this thing, but I wonder, would it play better if I put heavy valve caps on it? And you think to yourself, well, I don't know how to put heavy valve caps on a Coke bottle, so I'm going to have the most damped, it's called mechanical damping. I'm going to encase this thing in concrete. So you encase your Coke bottle in concrete, you have increased the mechanical damping, but the note and the pitch of the note has not changed. Mechanical damping is any type of weight, for example, that you put on the outside of the trumpet. The weights on the outside do not affect the air column on the inside. Okay? So if you've got a badly in tune system, you're not going to fix it by adding weight as far as the intonation is concerned. The added weight in mechanical damping, it actually does the opposite of what you expect. It diminishes the vibrations that are going out into your hand from the trumpet, the vibration of the metal, but it decreases the acoustic damping, so your peaks get higher and tighter, your slots get tighter. When you hit the note, it feels more secure. Okay? So that's why you may have noticed if you put heavy valve caps on, it feels like the slotting got more secure and everything, because that's what's happening. You are losing bandwidth and harmonic engagement. When you put those heavy caps on, if it feels or sounds like the sound got darker, it's because you've got less of the harmonic engagement way up in those high harmonics I showed you. That's where all the sparkle and stuff is. Thus it sounds darker. You're looking for the balance between where the notes are easy to start, the slots are secure, and you get the sound you like. So working with mechanical damping can be a lot of fun. You know, you can buy heavy caps, you can put brass valve guides, stems, whatever, move braces around a whole bit. It's a lot of fun. It's also, I gotta warn you, it's one of the main determinants of insanity and marital discord amongst trumpet players. So I recommend if you go down this road, I see a few people laughing, and I know why they're laughing. Anyway, yes, you. No. Anyway, I always recommend buying more things that I'm not really interested in experimenting with that now, but buy them, because after the divorce, you're going to have extra time so you can keep messing with them. So that's a good way to mess with getting security in the slots, but you're going to hear a tone change, and you're looking for that balance. So acoustic damping, like I told you, is changing the shape of the inside of the trumpet, okay? One way you can do that is with valve alignment. So valve alignment is just getting the holes in the pistons lined up with the corresponding holes in the casing, whether the valve is up or down. This was done in Photoshop. It's very bad alignment, so don't be dissing Stomvy about the alignment. It's a Photoshop thing, okay? So if your valves are out of alignment and you go and get a good valve alignment, what's gonna happen? Those peaks are gonna get tighter, they're gonna get higher, it's gonna be harder to start the note, you're gonna get a little bit less bandwidth, less harmonic engagement, okay? How much, we don't know. Depends on how far your valves are out to start with, how much you have to correct them, etc. Typically, a valve alignment feels more even afterwards, and there's only a few rare occasions where I would say a valve alignment would be detrimental. However, I will say that at this point in my career, I think of a valve alignment as a tool. It's not necessarily a necessity, rarely does anything bad, but it's a tool to get you to this balance you're trying to get to of the slotting that feels good, the sound you're looking for. Okay, so let's say, and I'm about to turn it over to the rock star, so let's just stay awake a few more minutes. Let's say you've really decided, oh, you know, my system's really out of tune with itself. Well, you need to understand that the mouthpiece is responsible for 40% of the relative intonation, the trumpet's 60%. So the trumpet's got an advantage. If you've got a trumpet and you feel that it's really out of tune with itself, a lot of you know that the lead pipe and the bell stem are the two parts of the trumpet that have the most to do with the relative intonation of that instrument. And I've seen a lot of people over the years say, well, I'm gonna put a new lead pipe on my trumpet, you know? I'm gonna get this lead pipe from that trumpet and put it on my trumpet, and it's gonna fix the intonation. It's gonna change the intonation, relative intonation, but the odds of getting it right are about the same as walking down the street to the Pacific Ocean, spitting in it, and coming back tomorrow and finding it, okay? If you, it's true, you'd have to do a bunch of calculating and tests and this and that to really improve it in that way. But there is one thing you can do that's very, very helpful for relative intonation, and that's actually adjusting the gap. I'm starting here today with a very basic thing that says mouthpiece and trumpet, because I saw on CNN that the trombone festival is in Fort Worth, I think, this week, and some of the trombone players got on the wrong flight. They might be here, and I want them to know that they're in a trumpet place, not because they often get sorry. Anyway, so the gap. What's the gap? It's called the annulus, okay? But I don't like saying annulus more than twice in any given conversation, so we're going to call it the gap. The gap on the inside, as you see it, is the space between the end of the mouthpiece and the start of the lead pipe. It's very important. Don't confuse it with how far the mouthpiece is sticking out. People call me all the time, my mouthpiece is sticking out too far, I know my gap's too big. You can see here, the trumpet on the bottom, the mouthpiece is sticking out a lot more than the top one, but the gap is the same. What the gap is important, but don't confuse it for that, okay? So what does a gap do intonation-wise? Well, here we are back to our staff. You guys all remember this from before. Everything's nicely in tune. We're getting good harmonic engagements. We're happy. The world is wonderful. The next thing, the next slide, all we did was increase the gap. Look what happened to the pitches. Most of them got flat. The E got sharp, but they got flat and sharp by different amounts. It's non-linear. It's not like the tuning slide. Tuning slide, when you pull it out, all the notes get flat by about the same amount. You pull it in, they all get sharp by about the same amount. The gap doesn't do that. Mother Nature said, oh, let's mess with the trumpet players. So these pitches shift around, okay? So here you go. The 5 in the middle, that's the one that looks the best here. To the left is more gap. To the right is less gap. You can see the right one's interesting. The first 4, the C, G, C, and E, they pretty much stayed the same, but the others got messed up. So don't assume that the number 5 is the holy grail. In this particular situation, and this intonation was done with machine testing, the 5 worked out the best, but not necessarily the case for you. So right now, I'd like to tell you how you can calculate the correct gap for your mouthpiece, your trumpet, and the way you play. I'd like to tell you that, but I can't because it's not possible, okay? Why is it not possible? Because of lip insertion. We're trumpet players, we're human beings, it's an acoustic phenomenon. If here's the cup, some of us push our lips in further than somebody else, that changes the resonance frequency of the mouthpiece, it changes the acoustic equation, so you can't calculate it, you have to discover it. So here we go, look what happened when we increased the lip insertion, the intonation got screwed up. There you have it, in the middle's good. Less insertion that way, more insertion that way. You've got to discover it to get this good intonation. You can do a little self-test if you're not sure. You can put a little piece of paper on your shank, increase the gap. If things get better, add another piece of paper. Keep adding paper till they get really good or it fails, then you know you need more gap. If you add paper and things don't change or it gets worse, you know you're either at optimum gap or you have to go further in, okay? To go further in, you have to use a system like Bob Reeves figured out, like Bob Reeves figured out in the 70s, his sleeve system, or my coupler system, which is based on his, but I made some changes. So these couplers come in different diameters. They just snap onto the mouthpiece like that. The larger diameter coupler gives you a larger gap, the smaller gives you a smaller gap. And remember, you can fix a lot of problems with the gap. However, it's like fixing things in post. If you're doing a recording, the better you start out with, the better your final result is going to be. So the gap is a big thing. And think about, so I won't make a trumpet mouthpiece that we can't adjust the gap on. Think about it. How many of you are going to go around and look for a new trumpet at this place? Come on, tell the truth. Your wives don't know. Okay. And how many of you are thinking about trying mouthpieces? Okay, cool. So here's the deal. Let's say you're gonna try new trumpets, right? You take your solid shank mouthpiece, you go to all the different places. You go to Stomby first, of course. Then you go to Bach and Yamaha and all the different places, and you plug your mouthpiece into all these different trumpets, and you find the one that plays the best. But you may have passed up the best trumpet for you because you couldn't adjust the gap. Now let's say you're looking for a mouthpiece. So what do? You take your trumpet and you go try all these different mouthpieces and you find the one that plays the best. But if you can't adjust the gap on a mouthpiece, you might have passed up the best mouthpiece for you. In my opinion, it's the most important thing you can do to try dialing your system. It's more important than the trumpet. It's more important than the mouthpiece. Did I mention it's important? It's important. And you can try the paper test yourself to see if it has anything. Okay, so when you get all this stuff together, good intonation, appropriate damping, you get what I would call an efficient setup, and things are really good. I'm going to end here, before I turn it over to the rock star, with the 30-second fanfare that was written by Aaron Smith. He's also playing it. It's a 5-part fanfare played by 3 guys, Aaron, Javier, and Pacho Flores. So they did it in 2 passes, and it'll let you hear the type of harmonic engagement, the type of conflict tones when you've got 3 great players playing instruments that dialed in for themselves, and these happen to be our 4-valve instruments, which generate more harmonics and give you full access to the harmonic range, which we don't have on a 3-valve instrument. So you get to hear it, you get to see these guys, and then I'll turn it over to this guy. So here we go, Titan's Call. That's a 5-octave spread from a usable double pedal C on the flugelhorn to a double high C by Mr. Javier Gonzales, who I turn it over to.
All right, how you doing? First, I'd like to start off by thanking KO for inviting me to co-present, and for the ITG for inviting us to, allow us to present and contribute to the Guild, the pursuit of improving our equipment and our methodologies for the trumpet community. So I'm here to talk about a lead pipe approach to practicing for trumpet playing. This type of practice and understanding how to maneuver through the lead pipe in a balanced and controlled way has given me access to control and connect more octaves than ever that were possible, essentially avoiding the dangers of connecting such extreme registers without resetting the chops. Also, by starting my day through a lead pipe routine, it allows all the muscle functions to set and be balanced before starting the process of trumpet playing. Similar to that of an Air Force pilot doing a flight check to make sure all the mechanics of the plane are working before takeoff. So let me give you a brief history on why I started lead pipe as a tool to gain more balance and control over the trumpet playing. So I began experimenting with the trumpet, I began experimenting with the lead pipe towards the end of my second year at Cal Arts, or around 2005, 2006. But before the lead pipe, I spent years working on a Claude Gordon systematic approach routine, the James Stamp routine, with Bill Bing, my very first private teacher. Yeah. And about a year with Robert Slack working on a Bill Adam routine. And because of these methods of instruction, I had a pretty solid understanding and skill on the trumpet, at least for a college level student. And well enough to be able to work outside of school, working in big bands, Latin gigs, corporate pop gigs. Actually, straight out of high school, I was able to land a gig at Disney, working in California Adventure at this band called Surf State University, which is the current version of the Disneyland band, except we had no woodwinds, it was just brass and percussion. So at the age of 19, 20, I was playing third trumpet at a full-time gig at a park. Okay, so back to Cal Arts. CalArts being a performing arts school, I was there studying jazz and had the opportunity and encouragement from the school to collaborate with any and all departments of the school. Aside from jazz and classical, CalArts has a very diverse program of world music. So I got to learn about North Indian classical music and was taught the basics of sitar and tablas, African drumming from Ghana, Javanese and Balinese gamelan music from Indonesia, Balkan music from Southeastern Europe, didgeridoo from Australia, and many, many more other styles of music. And each class included a singing element because the music culturally is taught in the oral tradition. So before they handed you an instrument, we had to be able to sing the rhythms and the scales. So aside from learning the basics in their music style, students were encouraged to bring our own instruments and try to play, blend, and even improvise in these styles. If you haven't experienced any of the world music genres, just know that the vast majority of the harmonic structures don't really live in a major or minor chord structure. And the scales have scale degrees between half steps or even smaller, if you can imagine that. As interesting as that all sounds, I was a very young and eager trumpet player at the college level. I was really excited to learn all this stuff and did my best to get into every single ensemble that would take me as a trumpet player, and they did. I was doing so much diverse trumpet playing in Western and non-Western music, both in and outside of school, and I was having the best time until the inevitable happens. I started developing chop issues. Okay? And the previous methods I thought I had a decent understanding for were no longer working. Definitely not the fault of the methods, because they weren't developed for that type of playing, and if I was studying with any of those teachers, they would have told me to stop and take a time off. And bottom line was, I was spread too thin, and I should have taken time off. So as I dealt with my chop issues, thankfully we only had a few weeks left for the semester, so I did my best to take it easy and try to find different solutions to get through the rest of the semester. I ended up gravitating towards the lead pipe, okay? Because I was able to find some sort of balance with my chops. And because of all the singing and trumpet playing I was doing in the world music and bending all these pitches to fit in this chord structure or harmonic structure, that's where the exploration for the lead pipe started. And through the process of finding a balance and control in the lead pipe practice, my recovery was very, very, very quick, and I came back stronger with more control over the instrument. Okay, so now that was just the start of it. It took many years and errors, trial and error to develop a lead pipe routine, especially to where I have it now. And through my lead pipe development process, which I was still working on a Claude Gordon, Stamp, and Atom routine, and still influenced by the world music classes, and ultimately found ways to adapt them to a lead pipe regiment, which led me to a concept of muscle activation versus muscle reaction. Now, let's start with muscle reaction, because we're all familiar with this. On the trumpet, we have a finite number of intervals and combinations that we practice with the goal of gaining control over them with ease. Let me demonstrate by playing F major arpeggial. Every interval I play, I'm reacting to a very specific type of slot. Yes, I'm using a muscle combination to move into that interval, but when I arrive there, I essentially settle in and relax the muscles before moving on to the next interval. So if you can imagine a flight of stairs, okay, and when you start walking up the step, that's your first note, right? You place your foot on that step, and then you shift your weight onto that foot. And once you're comfortable and steady, you're then free to move that foot to the next step. And then you just repeat that process. So there's a physical state of reaction and stability on every step where the body relaxes and essentially resets before moving on to the next step. So for the purposes of this conversation, that'll be muscle reaction. Now, muscle activation. Muscle activation follows a very similar path as muscle relaxation, or sorry, muscle reaction, but the biggest difference being that there is no state of relaxation or for a reset. So if we look back at these steps again, and now we imagine a rope bridge. Let's focus on the one to the left. Now we have a rope bridge up in the canopies. Let's zoom into that and remove the safety harness rails. All right, now we have this. So in order to move forward, there has to be a constant state of balance and a constant state of muscle activation to be able to move forward without losing your balance. Let me demonstrate this with an F major arpeggial. And I'll do the first example in muscle reaction where I play the trumpet normally, using the fingerings and all that stuff. And then the second version will be muscle activation where I play the F major arpeggial with no valves. And I'll start on G and bend down to the F. Not bad, right? Whoa. Clearly the muscle reaction sounds way better, right? it really does. But I'm moving into every interval and relaxing before moving on, right? So muscle activation, I'm balancing throughout a set of restrictions where the only note where I get to reset is the fifth, C. So now let's make this a little more complicated. Let's do an F major scale. Still not bad, right? Let's make it more complicated. Now let's do a chromatic scale. Harder than it was earlier. Okay, I'm a little cold. Here we go, one more time, for me. There we go. Sorry about that. It's hard. It really is hard. Now, I would say, in case it looks easy, and it wasn't that easy this time, I'm going to do the same thing on the bugle. There's a stompy B-flat bugle. So no valves, so there's no valve alignment on this, right? No.
Not that I'm aware of.
There you go. I'm going to do all three examples one more time, hopefully. A little easier. F major arpeggial. Okay, so this is the clearest demonstration I have to be able to show the differences between muscle activation and muscle reaction, at least on the trumpet. So with muscle activation, there is a constant balancing act that has to take place in order to have control and be fluid. So with this in mind, let's move on to the lead pipe. Okay, muscle reaction does not work on the lead pipe. Yes, there are slots that exist, but nowhere close to how they exist in the trumpet. And that's okay because the lead pipe approach is meant to practice muscle activation. Muscle reaction already takes place when you practice the trumpet. So with the lead pipe, let's focus, with the focus being on muscle activation, and the ultimate goal is to sound like trumpet on the lead pipe to be able to create and support and connect all the intervals that exist as they do in the trumpet. So to demonstrate this, I'll just play stuff on the lead pipe. I'm going to use a drone to make sure I don't get out of tune. There we go. Can you guys hear that? Soft? That's fine, that's good. All right. Here's just some like sort of free improv on lead pipe. So in that demonstration, all that was taking place for the most part was muscle activation. Of course, there are about 3 or 4 slots I was playing through where I kind of had the opportunity to reset, but those slots really are never in the same place depending on how you approach these natural slots. Okay, so how am I able to do this with such accuracy and control, and what are the benefits to learning such a technique? Well, let's start off by looking at this specific interval. Here. If I start on F, the nearest natural slot is roughly a 1/6 or 1/7 away, especially depending on how you approach it. For me, if I treat it like a slur, like if I'm playing an F to B flat on the trumpet, 90% of the time I will play an E. So if we look at the interval, there is a significant amount of space to explore in the space of F and E. Essentially, you have 11 half steps that can be accessible. In this space, it is impossible to use the muscle reaction approach to play any note, because the default will be to move to the next available slot, which in this case, example, is E. To demonstrate this, I will now play this F major arpeggio and only play to the 5th. And the more I try to use a muscle reaction approach, the more of a struggle it becomes. right? I'm pretty sure if you were to try that, you would all have the same result as I have, right? There's no way around it. So now with muscle activation, I'm using those same muscles, except now I'm changing how they get activated to go to be able to move around these intervals. So let me demonstrate that. So now I'll demonstrate going back and forth from a muscle activation to a muscle reaction, and you'll see the sort of struggle or your heel struggle going back and forth. But I'm not resetting my chops to be warped or specific. I'm just internally changing a different balance to move from one slot to the other. So it's not really externally what's happening, it's all internally to find that balance. All right, so what is this muscle activation technique? Okay, it's really simple. It's just something we use every day, the oral cavity. I'm just using the oral cavity and all the muscles around it to actively control it with a purpose. A simple example of this control is think about the letters in the alphabet and the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. If you could just very quietly follow me along, I'm going to say the letters of the alphabet, but in very short percussive ways. So we'll start here. It'll be like A, B, okay? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Now let's do the opposite with the vowels. We're going to elongate everything and really focus on the shape it takes. So A, E, I, O, U, Y. So that is a very, in just the vowels in the alphabet, there is plenty of muscle activation taking place to make the letters and vowels clear and distinct from each other. So now, with all that said, it still isn't the clearest explanation or demonstration of the muscle activation, right? So, to get a bigger or more specific example, after graduating from Cal Arts, I went back for my master's degree, and I yet again took another world music class. But this class was strictly a vocal class, and we spent one of the weeks learning about polyphonic singing, where you sing, it's a singing style where you sing one pitch and manipulate the shape of the oral cavity to create an overtone series with a whistle-like sound. Let me demonstrate. Hopefully I can try this. It's very hard to do. But let's see what I got. Were you guys able to hear a little whistle? Right? Okay, I am very limited to how good I can do that, but let me introduce you to this person. Her name is Ana Maria Hefele, who is a master at this. She is incredible. I'm going to show 2 videos of her doing what I was trying to demonstrate, but with way more control. And the second video will be of her actually performing a piece that she wrote, where she's changing her singing pitch and from one note to another to be able to get more access to different scales in this improvisation. So here's the first video. Awesome, right? All right, so now think of that technique, and now she's going to use that technique to actually play a sort of musical piece, and just listen to the incredible control she has. as you can tell from the spectrum analysis, all the frequencies she was able to create with just her voice and changing the oral cavity. So just so we're clear, I'm not playing the lead pipe in this exact way. It's impossible. But the muscle activation she is using to explore an overtone, to find an overtone pitch, and then control the movement of that overtone series by activating the muscles in the oral cavity, and then being able to balance the oral cavity shape to move up and down without losing the control or balance. That's the technique to be able to focus on. But it has to be balanced and controlled. I feel like a broken record. It has to be successful, okay? So I began adapting this type of technique to the lead pipe. In order for the activation to work, there must be balance and control. It's not about forcing the notes to exist on the lead pipe. It's about discovering the shapes of the oral cavity that allow for this balance of these notes to exist. And then, while being able to create those notes, to then have the ability to ascend and descend to any possible note while maintaining control of the balance shape that is fluid, flexible, and adaptable. Let me demonstrate that. So the shape and the shape of the oral cavity doesn't always need to be the same shape. I can start from the middle of the horn and use that shape to connect to the highest point and the lowest point, or start from the highest point and use that shape to connect to the lowest point, and also start from the lowest point and use that shape to connect to the higher of the instrument. The better you understand, and the better understanding you have about muscle activation, the more you're able to play with the lead pipe in the controlled, balanced way like we do on trumpet. All right, so what are the benefits of learning this technique? Well, I could just list off a bunch of things like higher notes, bigger sound, more endurance, expand your range, and so on, but there are many methods out there that have a path to this. Yes, the lead pipe has its approach and can deliver on all of that and so much more, but like all the other methods, it's not guaranteed that you'll have this, right? But it's, you have to understand why each process and method exists to be able to get to that point, and that's how you get to a higher level of trumpet playing. Now, also, the lead pipe approach isn't meant to replace any method, because to this day, I still use elements from the Gordon, the stamp, and the atom routine. So instead, I treat the lead pipe as an approach, as an assessment, as a I treat the lead pipe approach as an assessment warm-up tool before playing the trumpet, taking into account how today's chops feel. The same way an Air Force pilot, does a flight check before takeoff to make sure all the mechanics of the plane are working, or an opera singer that spends 20 minutes working on face stretches while they buzz and hum. We've all heard this. They're really warming up all the muscles to really get to the point where they can start doing their craft. Or the best example is a pro athlete, which is the mindset that we should all have as musicians, where you do a 20-minute warm-up to then go do a 2-hour workout, and then preparation for the actual job you do, right? I think it has to be that type of sort of practice methodology, But I'll end with this. A lead pipe approach allows for all the muscle functions to be set and balanced before starting the process of making trumpet music. I don't play trumpet the way I practice the lead pipe, but the muscle activation process allows for better awareness of the oral cavity shapes and muscle structures that promote a balanced and controlled trumpet playing. And with that, I will end and send it back to Kale. Thank you.
Show him some love, Javier. Okay, don't leave yet. Okay, show me some love. Okay, we've got a few more minutes, and we gave you what they call in the military, I understand, a data bomb. A lot of stuff. Any questions? Okay, can we, let me go. Let me be the runner.
All right, good.
Your phone's first, but you're close.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. I used to watch some videos about you on YouTube doing those exercises with the lead pipe, and I was trying like 1 month to do that. But after that, I take a break about, I don't know, 1 hour maybe, and then I went to play the trumpet, and I felt like exhausted. So is that normally, or maybe I abuse to do the same thing every day?
Well, because lead pipe involves so much acrobatics for your muscles to work. Like right now, I was doing all this lead pipe stuff, and I was talking, which I don't normally do. I normally just play the horn, be quiet, and just do the job. But having to do all this, use my words and oral cavity to talk and then demonstrate stuff, I noticed that I was already overworking. So yes, it has to be a balance. You can't play, like, if you were to spend, let's say, 4 hours doing nothing but the arbins without stopping, you're going to be exhausted. The lead pipe, it's like 15 minutes of lead pipe can be equivalent to, an hour of playing. So it is very exhausting because you're trying to, first of all, when you start practicing the lead pipe, you start trying to force the interval to happen. So you're forcing something that doesn't feel natural because you're trying to play like the trumpet. As I was describing earlier, you have to learn how to activate, how to tweak, how to change the shape. It shouldn't be difficult. It should be very easy and smooth and balanced, but you have to work at finding the balance. So you were getting exhausted because you were overdoing it and trying to force something that you weren't capable of doing yet, like trying to play high notes without having the proper sort of bass fundamentals to get up there. You have to really work towards that. Does that make sense? Awesome.
One real quick thing, because I've been working on it with Javier. I'm not quite his talent. But the thing that really helped me get to what he's describing is try to work on that vocal singing technique a little bit. Just getting a few of those notes and getting a few of the things, you're going to feel all these muscles, like he says, activate that you haven't felt before. And then I felt just doing some of that helped my playing. So anyway, you had a question?
Yeah, great to be here, and great to hear from you guys. I'm wondering if you could speak to, like, if you buzz a lot and the relationship to the lead pipe with mouthpiece buzzing, because I know anytime I work on this, if there's an interval that's tricky to get, I usually go to the mouthpiece and try and dial it in there, and that usually helps. So I'm just wondering if you do a lot of that, or what's the relationship between those practices?
Well, like, I used to do the buzzing basics, so I did a lot of that stuff back when I was working with Bill Bing. And it's a great device if you're working within a certain way, depending on what your job entails. If you're an orchestral player, that's probably the best thing to work on because it just sets you in a certain way. You don't have to worry about using a small oral cavity to compress some high notes to come out. So I haven't done a lot of buzzing in the mouthpiece, but I do use the up sound, which is a very similar device. Like I do Dancing with the Stars, and when we do show days, we have a 4:30 a.m. call time for a 5 p.m. start time. Or sorry, for a 5 a.m. start time, excuse me. And, it's either I'm going to wake up really early, then I already have to get there, or I'm going to just figure out a different way, which is a combination of using the up sound or buzzing the lead pipe to get myself situated, because I don't know what's going to be in front of my music stand at 5 a.m. There was one season where they ended up changing this one song. It was Orange Colored Sky. And the very first note of that thing is a C to a G or an E to a G, and then the next note is an E to an A, And we had to pre-record this because there was not enough time for the set people to put up the stage. So now we were off the song. We had to record a reference for this edited version of it. So we did it at 5 in the morning. Thankfully, I did buzzing my up sound and enough lead pipe buzzing where I came in and we recorded this minute 30 second version of this song, and it was record ready at 5 a.m. Not because I mean, but that's the job. That's sort of what I have to do. So if you can get to the point where whatever device you use, if it's helping you get your ducks in a row, where you're just balanced before you start playing the instrument, it's a great approach. I also do a bunch of free buzzing as well. So it's the same concept where with free buzzing, you're really working on getting your muscles to be balanced. It's not really about what's happening here. At least for me, it's not about what's happening here, but getting this to be secure where you're going. It's about making sure the muscles are really not tight, but correctly balanced and controlled to make this middle part work. And that helps me when I've had a tough day before to get myself situated before going on to the lead pipe or even going on to the trumpet. So does that sort of answer that?
Yeah. So I mean, whether it's buzzing or free buzzing or the up sound or lead pipe, you're approaching it the same way, and it's all for that.
Yeah, and it's always before you get to the trumpet.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the trumpet, you're going to start, you want to have that good sound of the trumpet, which makes you question your life sometimes. It really does. But if you take all the steps to get to that, before you get to that point where everything functionally feels great, then when you get to the trumpet, it should be easy. Hopefully, that's the goal.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, pass it on. We got a runner now, right?
You made mention of a book that you, at the very beginning. Is that something that worked out for you? Or is that something that I would work out for me? Or are you wanting to avoid that question?
I'm still working on it. Unfortunately, because the way I learned this was not a very cutthroat way. I had to discover all this stuff. So the discovery finally led me to this type of explanation. So I'm still working on a formula to be able to teach this without me being there in person.
The book that K.O. mentioned.
Oh, that one, sorry.
Yeah. That's Trumpet Yoga by Jerry Callett. It was long. I mean, I got this when I was 16, 50 years ago. I'm sure it's still available. 1973, it says. So not quite. So it's in. You can come by the Stomby booth if you want to check it out. You're welcome to see it. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Could you demonstrate the vocal technique one more time?
Oh, shoot. Wait, sure.
That wasn't the A question, right?
Here you go. I'll give it another shot. Again, I'm nowhere good compared to how she is. It sounds good, but you didn't hear her. It's not so good.
I think we got some questions in the front row.
Yeah, right here in the front.
Yeah, actually, it's not a question, but I just wanted to give a plug for the Upsound. I probably had it for 10, 15 years. When it first came out, I talked to you about it today earlier. And I do it every day in the evening before I go to bed, and I wake up fresh in the morning. And I'm going to tell you, even after a hard gig, it really works. All the stuff I've seen out there, all the different stuff, that is the best product I've seen yet, and it works. I recommend all my friends that are trumpet players. And also, Javier, I've been watching your videos since you started a long time ago, and that whole thing, especially a lot of people don't believe in the buzzing and all. You know, if you try and think of it as drum playing, it's wrong. It's wrong. You have to think of it as an approach to finding a path, and it works.
Awesome.
We agreed on $20 for that plug. Anybody else? Any other questions?
When you're first starting out with this...
Oh, it won't, maybe give it to him because I could barely hear him.
When you're first starting out trying to do this lead pipe regimen, do you just sort of do trial and error and figure out where the slots are? Because what I'm finding is like I'll get up to one note and I'll do fine, and then when I try to go another half step, it becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
Is that typical?
It's definitely typical because you're used to a certain gravitation to the interval, but this is one tip that you can use. So if you're starting on F and that E slot is right, it's that next break, Kale sort of was trying to do it this way. If you can bend that as low as possible with control, and then do the opposite and try to meet them in the middle and practice to the point where you can cross over. That's sort of the oral, the vocal singing I was doing earlier, where I'm changing the shape of the oral cavity to be able to shift. I mean, I'm singing in my falsetto voice, so if I go ooh, ooh, that movement, ooh, that movement, if you understand that, it's the same process from that specific slot to where you're starting, and you're trying to bridge that gap. But you're trying to bridge that gap with control and not sort of being pulled to where the slot is. It's definitely trial and error. Yeah.
So before this guy says, are we get out of the pool? Do we got a couple more minutes? We started late, or are we done? Thank you so much for coming to see us. Come see us, find us in the halls, come by the booth. If you got questions, find us, talk to us, email us, whatever, and have a lot of fun.